catching up. Okay, there we go. Um, Good to see you all. Hi, Suvansh has just joined us. Um, we're about to begin our class on Gompa Ropsel. I don't think I have to, we don't have so many, sometimes we have people that are not clear that they meant to come to the class, so I have to say this is a class in the philosophy, Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings and everything, but don't have that kind of problem. So let's see, how do I get back to, if I want to see the group view? Anyway, I'll get that in a second.
Top right, view, and then gallery.
Oh, right. Thank you. There we go. So I can see everyone. So we're going to begin with the prayers. Shankar is going to put up. Now, if you happen to have been listening to the Dalai Lama's teachings the last couple of days, or, you know, he's given random teachings, always begins with this prayer. Sangye Churang Soke Chognam La. Usually for the mandala offering, it's the longer version of the mandala offering, sometimes a short one like this. Sangye Churang Soke Chognam La. Jangchu Badu Dagni Kapsu Chi. Dagi Chunyen Gipe Sognam Gi. Drola Penchir Sangye Drupa Shok. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the collections of merit and wisdom that I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit migrating beings. Sangye Churang Soki Chognam La, Jangchu Bardu Dagni Kapsu Chi, Dagi Chunyen Gipe Sognam Ki, Drola Penchir Sangye Drupa Sho. Then a mandala offering. By offering this ground, its foundation, anointed with perfume and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, sun and moon, visualized as a Buddha realm, may all migrators enjoy a pure realm. And then as a result, usually if we make a request, we have to make it's considered to be auspicious to make an offering first. So we've just offered the mandala, and now we make the request as Brahma did to the Buddha to turn the wheel of Dharma. O holy and perfect pure Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. Idam Guru Radna Mandalakam Diryatayami. Okay, good to see all of you. We're going to begin as we usually do with a little meditation. I was trying to say meditation, but it sounded like I was going to say medication. Probably some of you are suffering enough, you need some medication. So sit comfortably with your spine erect. If you're seated, you could with crossed legs. That's considered to be one of the better positions, although sitting in a chair, no problem. And as the Buddha mentioned, or as the sutras mention, many sutras, when the Buddha came back from looking for alms in the morning breakfast, he washed his feet, he sat down after having eaten breakfast, and placed his attention on placed his mindfulness on the breathing in front. Without controlling, just watch your breathing. Be mindful of it, keep it in mind to the exclusion of all other wandering thoughts. You can remind yourself occasionally, I'm not going to pay attention to the body or what the eyes see, the ears hear, the nose smells, the taste, the tongue tastes, body consciousness perceives. Like doing your income taxes while someone's playing music in the other room, the television's on, the traffic outside. You try to ignore that and be mindful of just the task at hand. That if you have a little success in calming the gross conversational thoughts of your mind. Bring your attention to a more subtle object, mental consciousness. Yes, familiar territory, that within which you think, you plan, you have memories of the past, within which you judge. See if you can recognize its contents. Is there a mood of engendered by attachment or anger, resentment, or just basic unknowing, jealousy, pride, whatever? All of those are like clouds in the otherwise stainless nature of your mind, clear light nature of your mind. Of course, they don't appear to the ultimate clear light nature of your mind. If you were perceiving that, there's no conventional phenomena appear to that. They're appearing to the conventional clear light nature of your mind, which is its lack of any obstruction to the arisal of thoughts, mental material, nor any resistance to the dispersal of those mental events back into the consciousness. They don't exit left or right, like in a Broadway production, or up or down, I suppose. Some Broadway productions, something pulls you up or stage goes down. They just absorb back into the nature of the mind. They're transient, adventitious. They arise because of causes and conditions. Letting go of them, try to perceive that clear light nature, which is lacking any conceptual thoughts, conceptualizing thoughts. You're still trying to realize it conceptually by means of a mental image, but there are no what are called namtok, no discursive thoughts going on, hopefully. And then identify this as the Buddha nature. Among the two Buddha natures, Buddha potentials, this is the transformative, the developmental Buddha nature. Buddha potential. Understanding that we have this all the time can bring a sense of peace of mind and joy. It's wonderful if you can associate this perception of this clear light nature with joy, almost like a tantric realization of bliss and emptiness when you talk about ultimate Buddha nature. I have the ability to perceive this developmental nature now because I'm experiencing an auspicious moment in the sense of this lifetime of leisure and endowment. The Buddha said was so rare, difficult to find, difficult to create the causes of, but easily lost and constantly eroding because of impermanence. We can use this auspicious moment where we have a glimmer of the nature of things. Even if our faith has not been honed completely yet, we have some basic faith in the path. The Buddha has turned the wheel of Dharma in this universe, and those teachings are not yet degenerate. They still live vibrantly in the minds of some beings who can share them with us. There's Dharma community. I'm free of the 8 unfree states. I'm actually born as a human with clear organs, clear mind, who can hear the teachings and talk about it, discuss it. I can use this rarely obtained life of leisure and endowment, rarely obtained. Most people in the world, you would not, even though they might be humans, most humans, they don't necessarily have lives of leisure and endowment because they don't have any kind of faith or interest to follow the path. They're interested only in the appearances of this life, the 8 worldly concerns, wanting pleasure, wanting to be free of suffering, wanting to have power, wanting to be free of being powerless and so forth, wanting to have possessions, to be loved, to be famous. Having heard the Buddha's teachings, we know that we could use this life for higher goal, to escape from cyclic existence, escape from samsara through following the Buddha's lesser vehicle teachings. Or as the Buddha advised for those of sharp intellect, that was not sufficient. He advised those disciples of sharper intellect to aim for the greater vehicle, his Mahayana, which goes to the great destination of enlightenment. Being a great vehicle takes all sentient beings as your focal object along with you to that destination. The essence of that Mahayana, entering into the Mahayana path, is the development of bodhicitta. Bodhi means enlightenment, citta means mind. It's a mind that is aiming for enlightenment, having recognized that the best way, the only way to really benefit sentient beings is for ourself to lead them on the path out of suffering from life to life. To do that, we have to become a Buddha. In order to do that, we have to have the 2 collections of merit and wisdom, which bring about the Buddha's holy bodies through merit, collection of merit, substantial cause, or the, let's say, one of the cooperative causes, and the collection of wisdom, realizing emptiness, the condition to bring about the Dharmakaya mind, omniscient mind of the Buddha. We need to know about the various methods, such as the 6 perfections and so forth, and to put them into practice. In order to understand these 2 collections, we rely on the teachings of the Buddha, of course, and his Mahayana commentator, Nagarjuna, who was explained in great detail by Chandrakirti and commented on by Lama Khapa in his Illumination of the Intention, Gompa Rapso, that we're studying. All sentient beings have been our mother numberless times, are like family even though we don't recognize them right now as having been our mother by their physical forms. And they certainly may not recognize us. They might consider us an enemy or stranger. But by relying on them, by cherishing them more than we cherish ourselves, holding them dear, their ultimate happiness more dear than our own, just like the proverbial, at least in Buddhist tradition, the wish-fulfilling gem that if you happen to acquire, if you clean and polish it and place it in a high position and make prayers to it, it can fulfill all your worldly wishes this lifetime, wealth and family and friends and so forth. Mother sentient beings are more precious, more valuable than a wish-fulfilling gem. Because by cherishing them, we can develop incredible collection of merit. We can purify eons of negative karma, get closer to that state of being able to realize emptiness and develop the collection of wisdom. So think, I'm going to participate in class today in order to learn more about the collections of merit and wisdom, especially wisdom, the two truths today, with the eventual aim, the actual underlying aim to achieve enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings, because from that state we can effortlessly, spontaneously, and without error, perfectly lead sentient beings, however long it takes, out of cyclic existence into that stable state of happiness, of enlightenment, everlasting, blissful happiness. I'm going to participate in the class today, listening, contemplating the words, meditating when we have insight, in order to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. Okay. Thank you. Good to see you. Hi, Anna. You've appeared on my screen. Good to see you all. So, near the end of the last class, I had some brain problems. Couldn't remember some story I wanted to tell you, some anecdote. And so I remembered afterwards, of course. So I wanted to remind you, it was in the discussion of how when the Buddha speaks, all the disciples, well, even high bodhisattvas, all the disciples hear. Paul had pointed out, I think, right, that the Buddha doesn't actually, make ordinary speech, but everyone hears in accordance with their, due to his intention, according to their karma and his blessings, they hear what is appropriate for them. So the story that I had been trying to remember was that at Kopan, the first meditation course I attended, Kopan Monastery in Kathmandu, Nepal, in 1974. So we had been doing, during the meditation courses at Kopan. If you haven't attended it, it's something you should consider. How many people have been to Kopan? Oh, okay. Good. Yeah. Not that many. Uh, so there are a couple of lectures, discourses, and meditations in between, discussion group. During the meditations, Lama had given us a meditation to uh, imagine uh, hmm, as you breathing in the blessings of the Buddha as light to your heart chakra, and then breathing out all of your negativities, having been blessed by that light and so forth. So, familiar kind of prelude to Tonglen meditation and to other kinds of tantric meditations. So, when we were doing that, I would feel some pain in my heart. And I thought, what is this? Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe because I'm doing some hatha yoga asanas in the morning or something. So I wanted to make an appointment to see Lama Sopa Rinpoche, who was teaching, giving the discourses, set up an appointment. But before I got that appointment, he was giving a teaching, and I was listening, as we all are, partially attentive, partially distracted. And he said, what I heard was, uh, heart is the nature of fire. While you're in cyclic existence, uh, samsara, cyclic existence is like a fire. So it's not surprising that you are going to be suffering. Like you say, why am I suffering? Why is this happening to me? It's the nature of cyclic existence. Suffering can come at any time, whatever cooperative conditions you try to create. Like our sister Diana, not my physical sister, our Dharma sister Diana, so cautious about wearing COVID mask and everything, and still came down with COVID and is still trying to recover from that. It's the nature when karma comes, when it ripens. So so Rinpoche had said, while you're in samsara, just to realize this, let go. When suffering is there, don't worry about it. That's the nature of cyclic existence. So I tried that the next meditation when doing the breathing meditation with visualization and everything, let go. And the the tension I had felt in my heart uh, disappeared. And so I was so amazed. I was telling people on the soybean coffee break. I don't think we had real coffee often, maybe occasionally. Uh, I was going to see Rinpoche about this problem I was having, but he answered it in class, and people said, "Oh yeah, well, what did he say? What was it? The point?" I says, "Remember when he said, heart is the nature of fire?" And they all went, "What are you talking about?" He didn't say heart is the nature of fire. He said hot is the nature of fire. Heat is the nature of fire. But what I heard was heart is the nature of fire, and that was a teaching that allowed me, some deep, experience that I hadn't had before. So that was the story that I had meant to relate last time. So I just thought I'd get that out there. Um, okay. So before we begin, how are we doing? Anyone have any questions or observations about the meditation we've been doing? Any Dharma questions? Doesn't look like Doris has.
I have to admit that I'm still quite confused about your question last week, where you asked, do Svatantrika sense consciousness see phenomena by their own characteristics? And the short answer was no, but everybody was saying yes. And I'm still confused on that.
Yeah, so it's not as though Svatantrika see it a different way. It's according to the philosophy, what the philosophy says, sentient. As,
Yeah.
so according to Svatantrika, does uh, true existence appear to the sense consciousnesses? According to Prasangika, all of the sense consciousnesses, uh, due to the imprint of ignorance since beginningless time, everything appears to the consciousness as being truly existent, as inherently existent. For the Svatantrika, in their philosophical view, the grasping at true existence only takes place in the mental consciousness. It's not something that appears to the senses. Okay, so you can check on that. Go on, Doris.
So, sorry, just want to get my words. The question was, do they see, pardon my vernacular, but by way of their characteristics? The question wasn't true existence. And isn't there a difference between those two terms? True existence and by way of its own character? Because your question was the latter, by way of its own character.
Yeah. So for Svatantrika, there's a difference, but for Prasangika, uh, they have the same meaning, right? Uh, Svatantrika believes that phenomena exist uh, inherently, but they do not exist truly. So when you're talking about whether they exist a certain way, that's different than how they appear. Okay. So I would ask those of you who've studied some tenets to go back and check that, and uh, we'll discuss that more if I've made some error there. But just for you to do a little bit of thinking. I remember when, who is it? Gomotuku was teaching at Instituto Lama Tsongkhapa many years ago, the great Lama Gomotuku, who passed along the Vajrayogini teachings to Lama Yeshe and to Gelek Rinpoche, who passed away a couple of years ago. Great Lama in Gelek Rinpoche's teachings about Vajrayogini, he mentioned how they had invited Gomotuku, who had the lineage of Vajrayogini, to give the teachings, and then he became their tantric guru, and they had to consider him to be like, to be an emanation of Buddha, as they were practicing very authentically. When Gomotuku was at Instituto Lama Tsongkhapa, he actually asked me questions like that about that, just to check my understanding. So anyway, good question. Thank you. So anything else before we begin? How are we doing? Don, you look like you're about to ask something.
I would just like to get the page numbers that we're starting on.
Okay. So in who knows? In the written edition, where are we? The nature of we're going to start with the outline, the nature of each of the two truths.
I believe that's page 234 in Tupten Jimba.
234. And in Jeffrey's text.
Um,
What is that? The nature of the two truths. In case you're using Tsong Khapa's The Two Truths section from Jeffrey Hopkins' book. The nature of the two truths. It's about almost the same page number, isn't it? Who knows? Does anyone have that?
Page 235.
235? Oh. Okay. Obscurational truths. Yeah. Okay. Explaining the nature. Jeffrey's translation is explaining the individual nature of the two truths. So in Chimpa's written text 234 and in Jeffrey's text 235. Nice coincidence. So in Jimpa's translation, it's that outline has two parts. So explaining the individual truths, there's explaining conventional truth and explaining ultimate truth. So first is going to explain conventional truth. Why? Because the whole, where we're at, we're still talking about production from other. And we got to the point of the having refuted production from other through different kinds of logic. And then one of the potent arguments of the opponents was that, why do you using all this logic? Everyone knows things are created by other. It's just conventionally, it's common knowledge. So now we're Lama Tsongkhapa, Chandrakirti, and Lama Tsongkhapa's exposition are trying to explain this very subtle differentiation about whether that would be a valid argument or not. Okay, so we're talking about conventional truth. So conventional truth explanation has three parts. The perspective from which the conventional is true or untrue. The perspective from which the conventional is true or untrue. So Jeffrey, instead of calling this conventional truth, he's calling it obscurational truths. And so in the coming paragraphs, we'll see what this difference is. What's the Sanskrit for this? Does anyone know? Do you know, Suvash? What we're translating? Okay. Paul knows. What is it, Paul?
It's samvriti sat.
Samvriti Satya, right? Did John disappear? John was here for a while. I guess not. Okay. So samvriti is what we can call conventional in some cases. Sometimes it can mean that which obscures or obstructs. That's why Jeffrey is translating samvriti satya as obscurational truths. And Jimpa is just translating as conventional truth. So the first division is the perspective from which conventional is true or untrue. Jeffrey says the first section is the obscuring consciousness in the perspective of which these truths and those persons in the perspective of whom these are not truths. So he has a more spread out meaning of that first division. So that's what we're going to be talking about first. Then second, how the mere conventional appears or does not appear to three individuals. This is referring to Shravaka and Pratika Buddha Arhats and Bodhisattvas on the pure bhumis. And the third outline, how the ultimate and conventional become as such from the perspective of ordinary beings and Aryas. Okay, so that's what we're going to be covering. So the first section, Jimpa's translation, the perspective from which the conventional is true or untrue. Jeffrey says the obscuring consciousness, when Chimpa says the conventional, so Jeffrey translates that as the obscuring consciousness in the perspective of which these are truths, and those persons in the perspective of whom these are not truths. So this has 2 points, 2 outlines, the actual point and a unique presentation of the afflictions. Okay, so that will be interesting when we get to that. So the actual point, actual meaning, okay. So both texts begin with the quotation from the 6th chapter of Majjhimakavatara Karaka. Chimpa translates, because delusion obscures the true nature, it is a concealer. That which is contrived by it and appears to be real, the Buddha spoke of as true for a concealer. And fabricated entities are merely conventional. Okay. Does that make sense? Don, it makes sense to Donnie. That's good. Okay. Jeffrey's translation of that verse is more nuanced. I say Jeffrey Hopkins, and more precise in some ways. In the actual Tibetan, do I have the Sanskrit here? I don't have the Sanskrit right in front of me. In the Tibetan, it doesn't say Buddha, it says the Muni, or the Tupa. It says, yeah, it just says the Muni. So usually the Muni refers to the Buddha, but it's one of his epithets, right? It's one of the names that refers to him. So Jeffrey translates it as the subduer. That's how he translates Muni. The subduer said that because bewilderment, which Jimpa is translating as, I think, delusion. The subduer said that because bewilderment, that is the apprehension of inherent existence, obscures what? Obscures the nature, the direct perception of the nature of the mode of subsistence of phenomena. So what is this? What Jimpa translates it as delusion, and Jeffrey translates as bewilderment. That's the Sanskrit word moha, or in Tibetan we say timug. When we talk about ignorance, sometimes people think of timug as sort of a synonym of marikpa, ignorance. It's has slightly different connotations. Sometimes it means the same. Basically, you could say it's ignorance. Jeffrey translates it as bewilderment. Jimpa's translating as delusion. So the subduer said that because bewilderment, moha, that is the apprehension of inherent existence. So that's what timug or moha does. It has that, it apprehends or grasps at inherent existence. That bewilderment obscures the nature, the root text says, with some commentary, it says that obscures the direct perception of the nature of the mode of subsistence of phenomena, how phenomena actually exist. Emptiness, in other words. Why does the commentary here that Jeffrey has inserted, why does he say it obscures the direct perception of the nature? Doesn't it obscure the nature in all ways? Anyone have an idea? Rachel has an idea.
Does that mean that you can have sort of an intellectual understanding without having a direct perception?
I think so, yeah. So you can still have timuk, you can still understand emptiness, but you can't have the direct perception of it. This ignorance obscures or prevents you from seeing directly the nature of phenomena, the emptiness of phenomena. And then Jeffrey continues, this ignorance, he has in brackets, is all obscuring. And that Tibetan word is kunsop. That note there gives a sort of from one of the, I guess the 4 interwoven annotations is from Lanrim Chemo, right, Paul? So here, even though we haven't been talking about Lanrim Chemo, the great exposition of Lanrim, there's a famous text that has 4 different Lama's explanations of certain passages annotated in it. So the interwoven annotations. In that, it gives an etymology of this term kunsop. So kunsop sometimes is just what's the Sanskrit for kunsop?
Samvritti.
Samvriti again, right? So the word samvriti is being used in different ways here, but here it's called kunsop or kunsop demba. Kunsop. It says kun means, quote, all of the nature of the mode of subsistence of phenomena. And zop means obstructing. The Tibetan word is dripa. That means it obstructs you from seeing the entirety of the mode of subsistence of phenomena. When it says mode of subsistence, that mainly means the way things actually are. That's referring to emptiness, right? So zop means obstructing and also means covering or veiling. Like when you talk about the veils of the ladies of the harem in ancient India and Arab countries, veiled their faces from being seen completely. Maybe you could get a glimpse of some shape behind there, but you couldn't see directly. Okay. So his translation continues, this ignorance is all obscuring, kunsop, and he said that those fabrications appearing to be true due to this moha, this ignorance, are obscurational truths. Samvriti satya are kunsop dempa, or kunsop den. And he has in brackets, because of being true in the perspective of the obscurational apprehension of inherent existence. So this is familiar to us, who we mentioned many times. Jeffrey's slogan, he said the Buddhist slogan was, Buddhist slogan is dependent arising, but he talked about samvriti satya as being truth for a jerk, right? Truth for a jerk here means true in the perspective of the obscurational apprehension of inherent existence. That's the jerk. You're not a jerk. It's your ignorance that is obscurationally apprehending inherent existence. Things that are fabrications exist conventionally, kunsoptu. So if you have the energy to unpack that and go through those two translations, there's a lot to be learned by comparing their translations of those words. But it's mainly talking about the different uses of samvriti. So samvriti can mean that which obscures, and sometimes it can just mean conventional, conventionality, let's say, conventionally existing. So that's the verse from Madhyamaka this 28th verse. So Jimpa's translation begins in commentary, because it obscures sentient beings from viewing the true nature, that is to say, the way that things really are, it is called delusion, or let's say it is called moha, or it is called timuk. That's a synonym of ignorance. I don't like delusion very much, because we many times at the beginning of our studies, when at Kopan, we were told all of the afflictions, instead of calling them afflictions, the klesha, we called them delusions. So that grates a little bit. Jeffrey also says this word moha, or timuk in Tibetan, he says, although Sanskrit dictionaries gloss moha by delusion, this text does not describe it in these terms. That means Lama Tsongkhapa's Gompa Rapso. But it is described as obstructing or obscuring. And thus I translate moha as bewilderment. That's why Jeffrey's translating it that way, he says. Because it obscures sentient beings from viewing the true nature, so this ignorance in our mind, this particular variant of ignorance that is grasping at inherent existence, that obscures us from viewing the true nature, which is emptiness, the way things really are. That is called delusion, let's say moha. This ignorance that reifies the reality of things, attributing intrinsic existence to them when there is no such intrinsic existence, and that has the characteristic of obscuring vision of the true mode of being, this ignorance is a concealer. So he's using the word, in Sanskrit, samvriti, in different ways. This ignorance is a concealer, or it's a jerk, you can say, right? This line identifies what is the concealer, and Chimpa has in parentheses there, samvriti, in relation to the word truth, in the context of the term conventional truth. Samvriti sat. Is that okay, John? Samvriti sat, or it should be samvriti satya?
As an adjective, it can be samvriti sat. I think it should be satya if it's a substantial, but I mean, yeah, I'm not sure. I think
Okay.
it might.
This line identifies what is the concealer, the samvriti. Sometimes samvriti means conventionality. Sometimes it means concealer. So the term samvriti has these various meanings. Sometimes, say even samvriti satya, conventional, what we might call conventional truth, can be called relative truth. What's the third one also? Paul's thing.
Transactional
Transactional, relative truth.
relative and
Okay. Conventional and obscurational truth. Okay. So this identifies what is the concealer in relation to the word truth in the context of the term conventional truth, where one is speaking of the concealer from the perspective of which things are conceived to be true. This line does not define what conventional truth is in general. That's Jimpa's translation of that section. So Jeffries is, again, more nuanced, kind of explaining that this term is used, the various translations of samvriti into Tibetan are used in different ways. Jeffries says, so this, Jimpa said, because it obscures. So Jeffries begins also with the word because through it, sentient beings are obstructed through what? Through moha, right? Through this kind of basic kind of ignorance. We can call it ignorance also, or bewilderment, because through it, sentient beings are obstructed, that is to say, beclouded with respect to viewing the nature, that is how things abide. It is called bewilderment. That's why Jeffrey, at that point, he said he didn't like delusion, right? Bewilderment or ignorance. And here, ignorance is the word that we usually know, avidya. So, marikpa. Vidya usually means knowledge, right? Knowing, knowledge. The particle before it makes it into a negative, not knowing, avidya, ignorance. Okay, bewilderment or ignorance. So moha or avidya, which has an essence of obstructing the perception of nature, of the nature that is the mode of being of phenomena, by way of superimposing inherent existence on the entities of things that do not inherently exist, is the obscurer. Again, samvriti, but here it's translated as kunso. It is the obscurer. This is an identification of the obscuring consciousness in the perspective of which truth, in the term obscurational truth, is posited. What does that say? This is an identification of the obscuring consciousness, or the obscurer, in the perspective of which truth, in the terms obscurational truth, is positive. So when we talk about, you could talk about conventional truth, you can translate it that way, or you can translate it as obscurational truth. It's truth from the perspective of this obscuration, or truth for a jerk, as I like to go back to. It is not this identification of the obscuring consciousness in the perspective of which truth is posited. It is not an identification of samvriti in general. Which means conventionality or conventional consciousness. So samvriti can mean these various things, depends on the context. How are we doing? Making sense? Maybe one sense, if you read it, you just read it and you said, oh yeah, that doesn't need any commentary. But it's has some level of subtlety there. So Jimpa's translation continues. This identification of what conventional means, or what samvriti means, parallels the following stanza from the Descent into Lanka Sutra, the Lankavatara Sutra. We've talked about several times. This parallels the following stanza from the Descent into Lanka Sutra, where cognition that mistakes what is essentially devoid of ultimate intrinsic existence is possessing such existence is stated to be the concealer. So this kind of phraseology comes up again and again. Although things are empty of inherent existence, they appear to be inherently existent. You can say it in the other way. While appearing to exist inherently, they are actually empty of inherent existence. So here it says, where cognition that mistakes what is essentially devoid of ultimate intrinsic existence, has to add that because from the Svatantrika point of view, you have to add the word ultimately intrinsic existence, because they say intrinsic existence exists conventionally, right? Where the cognition that mistakes what is essentially devoid of ultimate inherent existence, it apprehends that as possessing such existence. That is stated to be the concealer. So that verse from Lankavatara Sutra, Jempa translates, the arising of things is on the conventional. He has, so says samvriti. On the ultimate, there is no intrinsic existence, and no intrinsic nature. That which is mistaken toward no intrinsic nature is held to be a concealer, again, the word samvriti, of the perfect truth. So in that stanza, the word samvriti is used two different ways. At the beginning, it's talking about conventional level, the rising of things on the conventional. The arising of things is on the conventional. So the arising of things, the production of things doesn't exist on the ultimate nature, right? In the ultimate nature, there's no arising. Or like in the Heart Sutra, there is no eye, there is no nose, and there, and so forth. There is no production of non-production and so forth. Okay, so bear with me. Jeffrey translates that in the following way. Let's see. So Jimpa began that this identification of what conventional means parallels the following stanza. So that part is in Jeffrey's text on 236, in the middle of that paragraph. This is an identification of the obscuring consciousness no. Furthermore, that identification in Chandrakirti's supplement, that is in his commentary to the Karikas, furthermore, that identification is the meaning of the statement in the Descent into Lanka Sutra, which was quoted previously in this book called The Final Exposition of Emptiness on page 189. So that must have been on the translation of the Middling Lan Rim by Lama Tsong Khapa, where he also quoted this Lankavatara Sutra. So if you have that book, you can go back and see how the explanation was there. Furthermore, that identification in Chandrakirti's supplement is the meaning of the statement in the Descent into Lanka Sutra that an awareness making the mistake that what ultimately lacks inherent existence exists inherently. So, making the mistake that what is actually empty of inherent existence, mistaking it to be inherently existent, is an obscurational kunsopa, or what Jimpa translated as concealer. So the way that Jeffrey translates that verse that we just read, Jimpa's translation, the production of things exists conventionally. Jimpa said the arising of things is on the conventional. The production of things exists conventionally, kunsoptu, samvritya. Ultimately, it lacks inherent existence. So that's the way that Jeffrey's translating, that's referring to production. Ultimately, production lacks inherent existence. Jimpa translated, on the ultimate, there is no intrinsic nature. Third line, that consciousness mistaken with regard to the lack of inherent existence, Jimpa said, that which is mistaken toward no intrinsic nature. And the last line is asserted as the obscurer of reality. Or Jimpa said, is said to be the concealer of the perfect truth. So you can call it concealer or obscurer. Okay, how are we doing? Making sense? Karen, you look like you've taken a couple of antihistamines or something. You okay? Okay. Richard, how are you doing? Making sense? Okay. One sense, if you just read one of these texts alone, it kind of makes sense. But when you see the juxtaposition of their translations, can bring out some details that may not have been apparent to begin with. So now we come to the crux about this word samvriti. So in Jimpa's text, after the quotation from Lankavatara, it says, the Sanskrit term for conventional, samvriti, can also connote something that conceals. So this is what we've been saying. This is nothing new. We're saying this word samvriti can mean conventional. It can also mean concealing. So samvriti is referred to here as a concealer. Yeah. What does it conceal? As the phrase concealer of the perfect truth suggests, it conceals the meaning of perfect truth. So perfect truth. So the actual truth, right? So remember when we talk about from the Prasangika point of view, something that is true exists the way that it appears. And the only thing that is actually true is emptiness, right? Emptiness is the only thing that exists the way that it appears. This phrase, concealer of the perfect truth, I say perfect truth. So it is asserted to be conventional or a concealer. This phrase, concealer of the perfect truth, is not referring to veridical conventional truth within the distinction of veridical and distorted conventional truths. So Rocio, who's not here today, reminded us in one class when I was saying, veridical is not a word that comes to my tongue very often, or you might hear in the coffee shop or something, people talking about, but she reminded in Spanish, veridad. Well, in Latin, it means truth, right? Veridad. So this is kind of relating with that. So that this means kind of like conventional, the correct conventional within the distinction of correct and distorted conventional truths, you might say. Thus, the samvriti in the first line and the samvriti in the last two lines of the sutra code should not be understood to have the same meaning. In short, they're different. They have different meanings in the beginning and the end. The first refers to conventional in the sense of a framework within which one accepts that things possess attributes like arising and so forth. So in terms of the conventionalities of the world, there's said to be production and coming and going and so forth. The latter usage of samvriti at the end of that Lankavatara quote is in the sense of a concealer that grasps at true existence, which is the perspective that holds things to be true. So this moha, this ignorance, if you want, because Lama Tsongkhapa and Chandrakirti qualified it that way, that this timug or bewilderment or delusion, whatever you'd like to translate it as, means ignorance. This ignorance is a concealer because by grasping to inherent existence, it prevents us from seeing the actual nature of things. Okay? So let's see. Yeah. So Jeffrey's translation of that paragraph also is instructive. We won't necessarily all the time be going to both of them in detail, but this section being a little bit subtle is worth comparing them. So Jeffrey says, since the Sanskrit original for obscurer, kunsop or samvriti, so what does he mean by that, this Sanskrit original? In the Tibetan, it says, kunsop ki kedo. So this do or de here means, old or original. So kedo, original language. Kunsop deni, kunsop ki kedo. It doesn't mention the word Sanskrit. It just says the original term. Jeffrey adds the word Sanskrit, and Jimpa didn't add anything about original or the origin of this. Since the Sanskrit original for obscurer, kunsop, does not just mean conventional, but also is used for obstructor. This obscurer in the final line is an obstructor. What does it obstruct? Since the sutra says that it is the obscurer of reality, it says that since it obstructs perception of the meaning of reality, it is asserted as an obscurer or an obstructor. It is not indicating that it is a right conventionality. How did Jimpa translated that? Oops. he said the phrase concealer of perfect truth is not referring to veridical conventional truth within the distinction. Jeffrey translates that as what? It is not indicating that it is a right conventionality from between amongst the two categories of conventionalities, right and wrong. Okay. How's your head? Making sense? John, what happened to your head? Did you lose some hair?
Constantly. It's an
No,
ever. What?
it looks like you have that you went by the barbecue or something.
No, this is just me.
Oh, that's just you. Okay, good.
Yeah, I find that pretty challenging, to grasp what these two are exactly supposed to be, how they're supposed to be different. Is it saying that in the first use of samvriti or kunzop is the common sense notion of conventional, and then the second use is specifically as a concealer?
Yes, in short, right. You got it. So that's leaving out the third meaning of samvriti, which one of you referred to before. Paul, do you remember what the third meaning is? So it can mean conventional, that means in the conventions of the world, can mean obscuring.
But someone said relative.
Relative, yeah. So sometimes we talk about relative truth, conventional truth, truth for an obscuring mind, or obscurational truth. Those are the three kinds of ways that samvriti can be used. That's brought up, actually, those three meanings are elucidated in Prasana Pada, the clearly worded, which when those of us who've read passages from it always laugh a little bit because it doesn't seem, when we reread it, it doesn't seem to be that clearly worded. But that's the word commentary of Chandrakirti. So Chandrakirti is aware of this. Here he's only talking about, because in this context, it's only talking about two of those three meanings of samvriti. It's talking about its meaning as an obscure and as a conventional. Okay. Okay, so Jipa's text continues then. So I'll just read this and then we'll take a little break. Through the force of that concealer, he's got in parentheses, that kunsop, that samvriti, grasping at true existence, phenomena such as blue and so on, conventional phenomena, which are in fact contrived and fabricated, appear to sentient beings as possessing intrinsic existence despite being devoid of such status. These phenomena that are contrived by it and appear to be real, since they are not true only from the perspective of since they are true only from the perspective of the distorted conventions of the world, the Buddha spoke of as true for a concealer or truth for a jerk, right? How it was taught is as found in the sutra cited above. And that note 431, he's referring back to page 235, where I don't have the written edition where that had come up before.
It's just the Lankavatara quote again, Venerable George.
Just quoting the Lankavatara. So So Jeffrey translates that part. That's not the whole paragraph. In Jimpa's, that paragraph continues. But the part that Jeffrey's translating here, through the force of that obstructing consciousness, that ignorance, that moha, apprehending true existence, or grasping a true existence, fabricated phenomena, Jimpa says, blue and so forth, which are in fact contrived and fabricated. Through the force of that obstructing consciousness, Jeffrey says, apprehending true existence, or in other words, grasping at a true existence, fabricated phenomena such as blue and so forth, although lacking inherent establishment, lacking inherent existence, are fabricated to appear to be inherently existing, inherently established, and which appear to sentient beings to be true, are true in the perspective of the worldly, erroneous, obscuring consciousness described above. Hence, they are worldly obscurational truths. The subduer, the Muni, said such. The way he said this is what is set forth in the above sutra, that is in the descent into Lanka. So that's what that goes up to note in Jimpa's text 431. So something to sort of think about here. So here it's talking about through the force of that obstructing consciousness, through the force of that ignorance that's grasping to true existence. That's what we all have, right, in our minds. Phenomena appear to our senses, our mental consciousness cognizes them, and this ignorance is grasping at true existence. Why does it grasp at true existence? Because for Prasangika, they appear to be truly existent. That's not due to the ignorance, the appearance of true existence. What does that due to? Davis knows.
It's the grasping at true existence. I missed that. I mean, that's what, no, that's what I was saying.
Why did they appear? Why did they appear to be truly existent?
I keep conjuring this image of going out on the beach with grandkids and saying, let's build a sandcastle. I know it's not going to be there in the morning. They think it really is going to be there in the morning. They're both conventional sandcastles, right? Am I off base here with this? I'm sorry if
I have to be there on the beach with you to see the connection. But
yeah,
here,
okay.
what I'm getting at is that the ignorance doesn't cause the appearance to the senses of inherent existence. What causes that, Stephen?
The knowledge obscurations.
Right, the shedib, or the imprints of delusions that causes that, even when bodhisattvas who directly realize emptiness, when they arise from that, phenomena still appear to be truly existent. Even on the pure bhumis, the bodhisattvas, the 8th, 9th, and 10th bhumis, the phenomena appear. So that's not the appearance of them as being truly existent is not caused by the ignorance here. This ignorance is what sees that appearance of inherent existence and believes it. And that believing in it, that, grasping to it, Jimpa says, through the force of that concealer grasping at true existence, phenomena such as blue and so on, which are actually, in fact, fabricated. What does that mean in this context, that they are fabricated? Shankar, what do you think?
It means that, it's, we're creating it from our own, I'm not sure I know actually, or
So
I'm not
Jinpa,
sure I can explain.
so Jinpa has an extra word, contrived. I think he's just trying to give, the Tibetan doesn't have two different words, contrived and fabricated. It just says Truma. Rachel, what were you thinking? Why are
I was
phenomena
I was thinking production. I mean that it's a product, but I don't know if that's correct.
contrived?
I think it's just something we're adding on top that isn't there.
Well, you know, yeah, we're sort of imputing something that is there. The phenomena, what does it say? Which are in fact contrived and fabricated, which are in fact, Jeffrey says, fabricated phenomena such as blue and so forth, which, although lacking inherent establishment, are fabricated to appear to be inherently established, and which appear to sentient beings to be true. They're fabricated.
So I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Venerable. So that means the fabrication, the Juma, refers to this mistaken apprehension as inherently existent. It does not refer to some kind of participation in the invention of blue and what you're experiencing.
Invention of what? Flu?
The invention, like out of, like that in some kind of mind only sort of idealist kind of sense of like, I'm making it happen, I'm
Right.
so
Mm.
so I'm wondering, yeah, that's what I'm trying to, Jeffrey's translation makes it pretty clear that the contriving or the fabrication is of a piece with this grasping as inherently existent.
I
Whereas
think,
Jimpa's translation makes that is not clear to me.
yeah, I think that's what's happening. Anyone else have a different take? Suvaj? Richard?
Sure, Venerable
Oh,
George.
oh,
Yeah, I was thinking that all it was really saying is that these things, such as blue and so forth, whatever appears, is a dependent arising, and the nature of that object is such that it appears to be inherently existent. That they are fabrications in the sense that they are the products of causes and conditions, and the very nature of that has a dimension in which they appear to be inherently existent. That's how I was taking it.
yeah. I don't think it's referring, I think you're right. I don't think it's referring to, for instance, the fact that phenomena are actually imputed, to exist. They're mere imputations. It might sound like they are fabrications, sounds similar to that, but here it says they are fabricated to appear to be inherently established, and which appear to sentient beings to be true, are true in the perspective of the worldly, erroneous, obscuring consciousness described above. Hence, they are worldly obscurational truths. So something to think about to unpack that. David, before we take a break, what do you think?
I'm sorry, and I might be missing the point altogether here, but we use the example of Uncle Bob dressing up as Santa Claus.
Right.
Okay. When he comes down, we would say, look, there's Santa Claus. We wouldn't say, look, there's Easter Bunny. Conventionally, we would all agree that that's Santa Claus,
Yeah.
except the kids think it's really Santa Claus. That would be the worldly view, I would think. That's at least that's how I'm interpreting this. And maybe, again, I'm maybe all wrong. And even though if I had a different perspective and I knew it was really Uncle Bob, I would still agree that, yeah, that's Santa Claus. Or is this, am I mixing things up here? I apologize if I am.
I no, no, I think that's relevant, but it's so it's a little bit different here because Jeffrey is translating it as they are fabricated to appear to be inherently established.
I would say that, David, I would say that it's your Uncle Bob appearing to be Uncle Bob, when in fact there is no person there.
Okay, let's leave it for a moment. Let's take a little break. I'll leave my microphone on in case you want to debate amongst yourselves or ask questions among yourselves. I'll just turn off my camera. Shuggy, there we go. So we had some nice discussion while I was stretching my legs and emptying my bladder. Some of the others were also maybe getting tea or something. So just to remind you, there are two different things going on. Phenomena appear as truly existent, as inherently existent from Prajnanika point of view, due to the imprints of ignorance that we've deposited over numberless lifetimes, beginningless lives. Those imprints or bakcha are amongst the shadib, the obscurations to omniscience. They are not delusions themselves. The cause of the appearance is not the delusions, or in this case, the concealing mind. So they appear that way, and then once they appear that way to the senses, the mental consciousness that is like the grand observer of all of these senses and observing its own continuum, kind of like the person in the basement of the building that's looking at all of the cameras and the different doors, the door of the eyes, the door of the ears, the door of the nose, and so forth. Those appearances are appear to be inherently existent, truly existent. And the mental consciousness within it, that concealing mind, goes along with that appearance. The word zimpa here, you can say apprehends or grasps, or you can say assents to, assent. What's the word in debates in Parliament when you sort of agree with what's being said? Is that the right word? Assent? Yeah. So that consciousness not only assents to that, depending on the degree of ignorance, is really believing in that. Okay, it believes that appearance. That's the basic moha. So that's not fabricating the appearance of true existence, in my opinion. That's why there's a little question in my mind here. So let's continue on with the text. After that note in Jimpa's text 491, that's where I stopped. So as Sean pointed out, now it's going to start mentioning the word fabricated again. Those entities fabricated by conceptualization which remain untrue from the perspective of any of the three individuals, Shravaka and Pratikya Buddha Arhats, and Bodhisattvas who have attained the purified grounds, that means the 8th, 9th, and 10th bhumis. So why are those three kinds of persons, or three categories of persons, exceptions here because they have all eliminated all ignorance, all moha, if you want, all bewilderment, all delusion, all the afflictions. So they remain untrue from the perspective of those individuals. They don't grasp at them as true. They see them as untrue. Because they remain untrue from their perspectives, they are referred to as merely conventional. Okay, let's see again. So Jeffrey's translation reads at the bottom of 237, the last two lines of the text. Those fabricated things, which, in brackets, even though they do not inherently exist, are fabricated by thought to appear to be inherently existent. Those fabricated things, which even though they do not inherently exist, are fabricated by thought to appear to be inherently existent. So I have some trouble with that interpretation because they are appearing to be inherently existent. I'm not sure that this is translating that correctly. Also, Jimpus said, what was that? Those entities fabricated by conceptualization, Jeffrey said by thought, which remain untrue from the perspective of the three individuals. So Jeffrey is adding some other words there. Those fabricated things, even though they do not exist inherently, are fabricated by thought to appear inherently existent, and which are not truths in the perspective of the three persons, that is, hearer arhats, hearer foe destroyers, solitary realizer arhats, solitary realizer foe destroyers, and bodhisattvas on the 8th, 9th, and 10th grounds, called the three pure grounds. They are not truths in the perspective of these three categories of persons. They are not truths. They are not true, right? In the perspective of their own obscuring consciousnesses, since they are beyond such ignorance. And hence, those phenomena are called mere conventionalities, or in Tibetan, kunsop tsam. And in Sanskrit, samvriti matra. So matra, remember where matra comes? Not mantra, matra. Where do we get that word?
Only or merely, right?
Right. Only can translate only. So when we say, what do we call it?
Like chitta matra.
Chitta matra, right? Matra, right? That's the mere mind or only mind, phenomena or only mind from that point of view. So that's the same word here, sam or matra. How are we doing? Making sense? I think in our discussion group on Monday, I will try to do a little more research, try to just clarify my own mind about what the word fabrication is referring to. Richard, do you have any idea? You have any thoughts? Opinions?
I think of it as meaning construction.
So that means
Construction.
So that means before that ignorance is constructing them, they don't appear to be inherently existent? Sounds like it's
Missing
saying,
something, because that certainly sounds like what I understand it to be, but perhaps I'm missing some nuance.
so say for instance, for the Bodhisattvas or the Arhats, the Bodhisattvas and the pure bhumis, or the two kinds of Arhats, these three categories of persons, they no longer have that concealing mind, that conceptual mind. But still phenomena appear to be inherently existent. That's
Yeah,
my doubt about what the meaning of that is, whether those two translations are correct or not. Okay, so we'll talk about that on Monday. And you can sort of do your own research. So let's just go a little bit further. Then Jinpa's translation of Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary continues. The following passage, which I will explain, appears here in the commentary. So that means Lama Tsongkhapa sometimes is commenting on the root verses, sometimes is commenting on the Bhasham, the commentary by Chandrakirti. Here, this is a segment paraphrased from the Bhasha, which we'll see from Chandrakirti's auto commentary. It's not literally exactly how it's stated there, but it sort of gets to the gist. So Jinpa's translation says, a few examples of dependent origination, such as reflections in a mirror, echoes, and so on, do not appear as false to those ridden with ignorance.
Do appear.
Do appear,
Do appear.
Venerable George.
Oh, you know what did I say? Do not. They do appear as false to those ridden with ignorance. So that means those who have this, delusion or moha, or however you like to try bewilderment about the ultimate nature of phenomena, they still can recognize that reflections in a mirror are not true, that echoes and so forth are not originating voices and, originating sounds and so forth. They do appear as false to those ridden with ignorance. I just want to see how Jeffrey translates ridden with. Even to those who have ignorance, okay? Yeah. Ridden with ignorance sounds a little bit heavy. Yet some examples, such as the blue color of material forms, some examples such as the mind, the feelings, and so on, appear to them as real. Okay, some things appear to be real, like, like the color blue, or trees, or fences, or your car, and so forth. And the feelings that give rise to the delusions and so forth. The true nature, that is the mode of being of all phenomena, never appears to those that have ignorance. The true nature, that is the mode of being of all phenomena, never appears to those ridden with ignorance. Or Jeffrey says, the nature, that is the mode of being of phenomena, does not appear in any way to those having ignorance. Then Jinpa continues his translation of that passage. Therefore, intrinsic nature and those things that are false, even on the conventional level, are not conventional truths. Or as Jeffrey says, therefore, the nature of those things that are false, even conventionally, are not obscurational truths. Okay, that's a little bit difficult to parse. So note A in Jeffrey's translation here, he says, cited here in paraphrase. So Jeffrey says, Lama Tsongkhapa reads a certain phrase here, Chunamgi Yinluki Rangshin, the nature of the nature of the abidance of phenomena. And for Chandrakirti's day, Tsongkhapa reads Rangshin day. The changes make the passage easier to read without distorting it. Tsongkhapa frequently does such with citations to improve the reading of the citation. Jimpa's note on that. Oops. I didn't see the number. What is the number? The number of that?
432.
432. Does he say anything there? He just says, he just gives the place where the commentary comes. Okay, so what's going on here? The commentary says, this citation from the Basham says, in Lama Tsongkhapa's sort of paraphrasing it, a few dependent arisings, and that the word a few will be explained, you can see in the commentary just below this. A few dependent arisings, such as reflections, echoes, and so on, appear to be false even to those who have ignorance. So the certain subset of dependent arisings can be understood by those with ignorance to be false, like a mirage and so forth, as being water. Whereas a few dependent arisings, such as forms, such as blue and so forth, minds, feelings, and so forth, appear to be true, right, to those with ignorance. They would say those are true. The nature that is the mode of being of phenomena, that would mean emptiness, right, does not appear in any way to those having ignorance. Therefore, that nature and those that are false even conventionally are not obscurational truths. What do you think? Who can explain that? Tina? Can you explain? Nadine's sister is with us there, her older sister.
Explain it using physics, come.
What do you think,
Well,
Paul? You're
George,
unmuted.
yeah, I think he's just saying that therefore ultimate truths and things that are false even conventionally are not what's meant by conventional truths. Is that all he's really saying?
Because ordinary people don't observe those as.
But what about the statement, Paul? The nature that is the mode of being a phenomena does not appear in any way to those having ignorance.
Right.
Ordinary
So,
people don't see emptiness.
right. And so therefore it can't be a conventional truth. And similarly, things that
So,
are
so an
completely
ordinary being, even before entering the path, can have a conceptual realization of emptiness, right?
Sure. But I'm assuming they're meaning when he's saying does not appear in any way, I'm assuming he's meaning directly appear.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to. So you think that you would have to put in parentheses there, which neither of the authors put in there directly, right?
That's what I'm thinking.
The
Yeah.
nature that is the mode of being a phenomena, that has to mean the ultimate nature, that has to mean emptiness, that does not appear in any way to those having ignorance. So we could argue if you didn't put in the proviso that it was a direct realization, you could argue, as Rachel was arguing earlier or pointing out earlier, that you can have a conceptual realization of emptiness. So emptiness does appear when it says does not appear in any way. Where is it? How does Jippa translate that? Oh yeah, that's part of the thing. The true nature that is the mode of being of all phenomena never appears to those ridden with ignorance. So when you say doesn't appear, so when you have a conceptual realization of emptiness, what is your appearing object?
Acuity.
Repeat the question again, please.
So Don, when you have a conceptual realization of emptiness, what is the appearing object to your mental consciousness? Because you're not realizing emptiness with your sense consciousnesses. You realize it with your mental consciousness, right? When you have a conceptual realization of emptiness, which qualifies as realization of emptiness, what is the appearing object to that mental consciousness?
I don't know how I would articulate it, but it's the reasoning of dependent arising and so forth.
Oh, well, how about fundamentally say the mental consciousness, what appears to it is a mental image, isn't it?
Generality, right?
Meaning generality.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the appearing object. It still says in the low rig text that emptiness does appear, but via that mental image, via that meaning generality. That's its appearing object. So maybe that's what it's kind of getting at obliquely in my mind, that emptiness doesn't, when it says doesn't appear in any way, one of them translates, that's how Jeffrey translates that, and
Never appears.
never appears in Jimpa's translation. To that conceptual realization, say when you're, Paul was saying it, he thought it meant it had to be a direct, that was excluding anything other than direct realization. So conceptual realization, doesn't emptiness appear in some way? It says Jeffrey says in any way, it appears as a mental image, maybe.
But don't you have to
Debate, or you could say it does appear, like say for instance, when you're thinking about your mother's face. Stephen's mom recently passed away, so if Stephen's thinking about his mom's face, it's said that the appearing object, that's the main object that appears, is the mental image, the meaning generality of his mother's face. But it's still said in low rig that his mother's face does appear via, like through looking through those glasses, those filters. So I'm sorry, I cut off Sean. Sean was making a comment.
Well, I was just going to say, I thought in order to get to conventional truth, you have to be examining emptiness. And if the ordinary people aren't examining emptiness, then...
Not all ordinary people, but some ordinary people. Ordinary means they're not yet Aryas, and they maybe not even entered the path, because you can realize emptiness even before entering the path, right? Or no? What do you think? No? You can't have a conceptual realization of emptiness before entering the path?
Well, you could have you can't have a direct realization of it.
No, right. Say conceptual.
Sure. but then you're having to explore the ultimate.
So for instance,
Without exploring the ultimate, it's not conventional truth.
right, but people those are ordinary people. They can have
Sure, but they have to be examining the ultimate truth.
yeah, of course. Yeah.
Venerable George, but I think that's why he says the nature that is the mode of being a phenomena does not appear in any way. And I think the nature of that is different from a mental image. That's what I think the distinction is being made.
Which translate, oh yeah, so Jeffrey's translation,
Right.
the nature of that.
Right, because the
I
Tibetan
think
the nature that is the mode of being a phenomenon.
right.
Yeah,
So
it's the word mode
nature,
that's
that
critical.
means emptiness itself
Emptiness itself, yeah.
does not appear in any way to those having ignorance.
And
Go on.
I want to add one thing to what Paul just said. This goes back then maybe to this term is being translated as fabricated, because the appearance to anyone other than this special class of being, this is the only appearance is through, as you explained, through a mental image. It's jime jima. I think it says in the Tibetan, right, that's the appearance is, yeah, it's a fabricated appearance, and maybe that's what the reference to that fabrication is, that's the only, even a conceptual realization of emptiness is not the nature appearing directly.
Well, yeah, you're using the word directly again. It says it doesn't use the word directly here.
But it isn't the nature appearing either, because because all appearances are
Doesn't emptiness appear to a conceptual realization, realizing emptiness?
I would say no. I would say the mental image appears.
Mental image.
There's a difference between appearing and appearing object. The appearing object is the main object that's appearing. But it still said that in low rig, it still says that the object, the conceived object, in this case, emptiness, the shenyul, still appears, but it's not it is the perception of it is obscured by that mental image. Okay, something to think about anyway. So let's see, where is that? Where did we get to? What was the last sentence we read there? Therefore, even when the reflection is established as the absence of being, no, we didn't read that yet. The phrase, oh, yeah, we haven't read this part yet. The phrase, a few examples, is translated. So that's where we're going to begin next time. The phrase, a few examples, is translated as some in Naxo's version, or as in Jeffrey's translation on page 238, he says, in that, quote, a few, chungzechik, is rendered better in accordance with Naxo's translation as some, gashik. So that's where we're going to begin next time. So those of you who have time on Monday to join for the discussion group, we'll see. We'll talk a little bit more about this. I think it's a lot of interesting things when you sort of delve into it. You have to go back to your knowledge store, your memory castle, or whatever they call it. What are the people that have great memories? What do they call it? Their memory castle, or their memory something, where you can remember things in different places. You have to remember low rig and everything, and what's actually appearing, what the appearing object is. Emptiness appears, but it doesn't appear clearly, because you're understanding it via the mental image, sort of like through the mental image, but it's still said to appear. So that's my question there, and what the word fabricated is being referred to here. So what do you think? Any final questions before we go?
We need your translation, George.
Yeah, my translate, right. So yeah, we can go back and look at other translations also. So yeah, Minto.
I have a question. So I guess my question is that like at you think that do people usually need like a higher meditative state to actually see these points more clearly? Like
Wait, so hold on. So people need a higher meditative state to see what?
to see these mental images more clearly.
Not so well in a certain sense. The mental image is appearing, when you analyze that mental image, whether it exists the way that it appears, maybe you get a little better understanding of it, but I don't think the mental image gets any clearer. Yeah, the mental image of inherent existence is still clearly appearing there until you refute it, in which case there's nothing. There's just emptiness when you refute what appears to be inherently existent.
I thought that when they say that basically, let's like vision, for example, when you are in a higher meditative state, then the vision, for example, that you can see is that like somehow it's become more like a movie, it's become frame by frame by frame by frame. So you see there's a disconnection in the vision. But I'm not sure it applies to this sort of like image, conceptual image, realized in emptiness.
Oh, you're talking about in the Theravada tradition, talking about realizing subtle impermanence.
Yeah, yes.
That's on a different level. By the way, Minto, His Holiness was meant to give a commentary on the text you had asked me about some time ago, the inseparability of the Guru and Avalokiteshvara. Was it
Oh,
at
yeah.
you?
Yes, yeah.
That if I hadn't already sent you the links, that discourse was provided by Samdong Rinpoche because His Holiness, for some reason, either was sick or had other obligations. And that commentary is available still up on YouTube. So that may help you. Before we go, I think Nadine had a question.
Yes, thank you, Venerable George. Is
Yeah.
it correct to say the conceptual realization of emptiness is not mistaken with regard to emptiness, but it is mistaken with regard to the mental image?
Yeah, the word mistaken usually means mistaken with respect to appearance. So, yeah, you would say it is it does engage emptiness. That is a correct realization, conventional, let's say, conceptual realization of emptiness. It does realize emptiness completely legitimately. It's a valid cognition of emptiness because there's two, generally two kinds of valid cognitions, right? The valid cognition that are direct perceptions and valid cognitions that are inferential cognizers. So that the inferential cognizer, that means having realized it through logic, through a combination of, let's say, yeah, you wouldn't even have to be in a meditative state to have a union of shamatha and penetrative insight. You just use logic and have a realization of that, and you understand that. That is a correct, valid realization. Okay, good points, bringing up a lot of things. So, Shanka, if you'd be kind enough to put up the dedication prayers. So think that we made a motivation at the beginning 3 times, the beginning, the middle, and the end. The beginning, you want to make a strong motivation. In the middle, you want to engage in whatever activity you motivated with concentration and, logic and so forth. And at the end, you want to dedicate those virtues that were created, the virtues of merit and the virtues of wisdom, the collection of wisdom and merit. Due to these virtues, Gewa Di, may I quickly become a Guru Buddha and lead all migrators without exception into that enlightened state, to that very same state that we achieve. That's sort of the basic motivation and dedication. Then the prayer, may the supreme precious bodhicitta that has not arisen in my continuum and in the continua of others, may that bodhicitta arise and grow, and may that which has not arisen yet, and that which has arisen, may it not diminish, may it not degenerate, but increase more and more. And for our dear Lama Zopa Rinpoche, peerless teacher and assembly of children of the victorious ones, Shravakas, Pratika Buddhas, victorious Losang, father and sons, together with your lineage, Kalupa lineage lamas, all the objects of refuge of the infinite realms, please bestow now upon us the virtue and goodness to accomplish this prayer. In upholding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you, Lama Zopa, wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable, venerable Guru, to you I make request. You who is the soul, you were the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, while striving exclusively for the welfare of the conqueror's teachings and for mother living beings. You suddenly departed to peace. At this I lost hope. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the oceanic blessings of the three jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the bodhisattvas, may the smile of a new reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for us fortunate disciples. Then for all of our spiritual friends, all of our teachers, you who are my eyes for viewing all the infinite scriptures, supreme gateway for the fortunate ones traveling to liberation, engaging with skillful means, moved by mercy, rather than say love. Sewa means both compassion and love. All illuminating spiritual friends, please live long and stable lives. And then finally, dedicate your merits for those who are ill, who have passed away recently. Stephen's mother, Glenna, Diana Brahma, who's still suffering with COVID. River, the grandson of David and Karen, and others. Think of due to the merits that we've created today, amongst other things, they can ripen in different ways. May they also be the causes for the protectors to protect those who are vulnerable and to guide them through the intermediate state if they're there. Due to these merits, may the calamities facing us in the world today, of the elements, earthquakes and floods and windstorms and incredibly hot global warming, may they be abated, and may the minds of sentient beings, at least for some time, due to these virtues, be calm, equanimous, without hatred and so forth. Okay, thank you very, very much. Then 15, we had good class today. I look forward to seeing some of you on Monday and certainly next Saturday. We've got a lot to chew on, some tough, dry bones. So take care.
Thank you, Venerable George.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Venom.
George.